What's going on, guys? It's Mohammed, the host of Aware Alpha, and welcome to episode 80 or 81. I'm not sure exactly which episode this will be. Just want to say I'm feeling super grateful, super aware of everything that's going on in this world right now. And at the same time, I'm just super grateful to focus on this podcast. And I was thinking about this earlier that 2 years ago, this whole idea of me wanting to share my vision, my ideas, my lessons, and interviewing others and sharing their experiences and coaches around the world that can help individuals with their lessons and experiences. And it's crazy to look back and we are, episode 80. Like I remember like episode 15, I was like, man, should I really be doing this? There's only like 100 listeners and look where we're at today, right? So I'm just feeling super grateful. And today I'm super excited. Like most of you guys know that I've been really just getting guests onto the podcast. And now I find these guests are really on Instagram. And I see things that pops up on my Explorer page. I get curious about someone's page and, I look through their page and I feel like, if we're aligned, if we're sharing some things that I feel like the audience will learn from, I follow up with them and I try to get them onto the podcast. And today I feel that I have a special guest here. She goes by the name of Amy. She's an embodiment coach. And we're going to learn what she does, why she got into this space, and everything in the next hour. And with that being said, Amy, welcome to the Aware Alpha podcast.
Thanks for having me, and congrats on 80 plus episodes. It takes a lot of persistence and dedication to produce, lots of value and quality for your audience.
Thank you for acknowledging that. I feel like, only someone that's kind of been in this space can get an idea of like how much work that takes, just to even get all the stuff going, right? One of the first questions that comes to my mind is that I seen on your page about, I think awakening the feminine or something like that. And I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on what are your thoughts on masculine and feminine energies, and what comes to your thoughts or your mind when you hear those concepts? And I ask that because it's new information to a lot of the audience, and even myself. I discovered this stuff about 2 years ago, and to really just realize that like we have these two different energies and it has nothing to do with gender, and how important it is on this journey of self-discovery, right? But then I have heard some people say that it's just words that labels different emotions. And yeah, so you go ahead, tell us what are your thoughts on masculine and feminine energies and what are they to you?
Yeah, thanks for asking. And, there's so many different avenues that we can take when it comes to personal development and self-discovery and ascension and healing and growth. And what I found is this model or this framework of understanding what we call polarity, which is learning about these two different energies that we all have within us. So whether you're a male or a female, you have masculine and you have feminine energy. And understanding these two energies can be a way for deeper growth and deeper healing, especially if you are imbalanced, especially if you have been operating from a place of hyper masculine energy or overly in your feminine energy. So essentially we can use this framework to understand ourselves better, to come back into harmony, to feel more balanced, more centered, it really provides more radiance with our health. It creates more intimacy in our relationships. And I've found this framework specifically when I work with women to be something that it just makes sense. Like I'm going to go deeper into explaining these two different energies, but there's something about this framework and understanding these two ways of being that is really simple. And I think that's a lot of what we need, is just to simplify things. So to start off, it can be confusing because the word masculine in the mind associates it with male and the word feminine, female. So some other words that we can use to describe these two terms is we can use go mode for the masculine or flow mode for the feminine. We can use in what, like, yin is the feminine and yang is the masculine. So we're really talking about two different energies. And the reason why this is so important is because most of our culture is developed and our programming is in this hyper masculine or toxic masculine way.
Mhm.
And what that means is that we're obsessed with productivity, we're obsessed with constantly doing things and planning things. And the toxic side of the masculine can be around control and power.
Mm.
So within the masculine realm, there's healthy masculine and then there's unhealthy masculine that we want to look at.
Mm.
We're living in a really important time of healing right now on the planet, and individually and collectively, we need more feminine energy. The
Yeah.
feminine is really about flow, it's about intuition, it's nourishment, it's aliveness, it's about coming back to your spirit, to your soul, to connection, to intimacy, to vulnerability.
Mm.
And when there's a lack of the feminine, or when the feminine has been suppressed, that's where we see things like chronic fatigue or chronic depression or anxiety or imbalances that can happen within your physical or emotional health. And
Mm.
that's really what I'm seeing right now, is there's a big shift that's happening where kind of this old paradigm, this old model of operating in the masculine way, hyper masculine way,
Mm.
is leading to things like burnout and health issues and mental health issues and people feeling unfulfilled and unhappy. And through learning about the feminine energy and how to bring more of that into our life, there's a way to come back into balance. And not only does that help us individually, but then it helps our communities, and it really is helping us to relate to the planet and to the earth differently. So there's like a microcosm, and then there's the macro scale of how this is really shifting the world as well.
Yeah, no, I love how you said, like, pretty much like we need more feminine energy. And one of the things that has led me, I literally actually made a post about masculine and feminine energies yesterday on my Instagram. And what I was saying was, as a man that was grown, I grew up in a third world country. My first 10 years my 10 years of my economic career, I say, like my 10 years of working, like I was, like a very macho man, and like we never expressed emotions, none of those things, right? And in the last 5 6 years, as I've started to do this deep work myself, embodying my feminine energy, being in my feminine energy, like from taking more baths and sitting with myself and being instead of doing, has literally changed my whole life, right? And it's also has made my own relationships better with women. And I was saying this yesterday in my post, like, if I don't know how to hold space for my own emotions, then how am I going to hold space for my queen's emotions, right? So so it's so important to understand these energies, right? And the question, actually, I don't know, even I feel like, what other energies are there? Is there other energies, like, besides masculine and feminine energies? I'm curious to know. Actually, I've never even asked this question before. Like, in my mind, I just masculine and feminine energies. I mean, as the way you said that, I was curious, like, is there other energies as well that we have in ourselves that are there, like that there's a name or a label for it, in your opinion?
So within this framework,
Hmm.
the polarity framework, which is what we're talking about, these two different energies, there's just these two energies.
Okay, okay.
However, there are different feminine archetypes or different masculine archetypes, which I wouldn't call them different energies, but they are ways that we can connect more with each of these different energies. So I don't work a lot with the masculine archetypes, but there are some feminine archetypes that I use in the embodiment work that help
Mhm.
us to connect more with the feminine energy. But yeah, there's just these two energies. And even with these two energies alone, there's so much that we can learn from this construct. Like it feels like it's like a kind of, you mentioned it, it shows up in our relationships, how we relate romantically.
Mm.
It impacts our intimacy and our connection and our passion. It impacts our heart connection with the people in
Mhm.
our lives.
Yeah.
It also impacts our health and wellness and the way that we work and our career path. So it's really cool to be able to use this framework and see how it applies to all these different areas. And I'm
Mm.
glad there aren't more energies in this framework because there's already so much to work with here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, for sure. Do you like when it comes to men, right? I almost have this assumption that for women it's easier to get into their feminine. But of course, there's females that have a lot of trauma and everything and are in this masculine world and are in their masculine energies a lot, right? So for a man, how important would you say is for him to discover his feminine energy, tap into his feminine energy?
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's really equally important. I would say that healing some of the toxic masculine traits, you talked about the macho
Mm.
element of kind of this egotistical version of the masculine that doesn't show any emotions, or even suppressed anger that comes in the masculine toxic masculine paradigm, where that then shows up in a lot of different ways. I think healing those patterns are important. And I think for men, this is interesting. And I'm curious to know what your process has been like, because for a man who has been taught his whole life, don't feel your feelings are weak, you're too sensitive,
Mm.
having all this stigma around what it means to be quote unquote feminine, this idea that feminine means weak, or that feminine means that you're too sensitive.
Mm.
Sometimes when men haven't felt their feelings for a long time,
Mm.
when they're learning how to access their feminine energy, sometimes they can swing really far into the feminine at first, and then they're
Mm.
feeling all the time and they kind of lose touch with that grounded masculine presence. So it really is this process where sometimes it takes that pendulum swing to the other side, and they're like,
Mm.
oh wow, now I have all of these feelings and I'm connected to my heart and I'm in my
Yeah.
body, and
Yeah.
it's kind of overwhelming, and then kind of coming back to that center. So the goal isn't to make men more feminine and make women more masculine, or like the goal isn't that everyone needs to be feminine.
Mm.
It's more about coming back into your own alignment within these two energies. And I'll share that men typically, and this is not all men because there's definitely a range,
Mm.
but the core essence of men
Mm.
is going to be more masculine. There
Mm.
are some men who their core essence naturally is closer to the feminine range, right? Similar, there are some women who their core essence, they might be more towards the masculine, or they might be really feminine. So I
Mm.
don't know if it's to say that like for one, it's harder or more important than the other. I think more what we're looking at is how do we, based on who we authentically are
Mm.
and what our soul is here to do, and what makes us happy and feel good inside, how do we bring these two energies back into harmony,
Mm.
right? Regardless of what gender we're at. I think overall in the collective, we need more feminine energy. That is what's part of this healing process that's taking place.
Of course. And I love that you said that it doesn't, like the point of these two energies is to just, like I like to say, is to deepen your own understanding of yourself, right? And yes, more men would be at their core, probably their core energy would be masculine, and more females, their core energy would be feminine. But sometimes doing this work, you could end up finding that as a man, let's say your core energy is actually feminine, and nothing wrong with that. You can, there are females that, get into the business world and they see that they love structure, they love making decisions, they love running a company, and right, so it's like they can still attract that man that likes to be more, likes to stay at home and like really embody the feminine energies, right? So there's nothing wrong with these two energies. It's just the perfect way to learn more about yourself, I believe. And once you understand these things, it's like another tool in your suitcase that you are able to use to navigate life's challenges, right? And the other thing you mentioned that totally clicked with me was that, like when you first discover this stuff, it's possible to get into your feelings a lot, right? For me, I would say actually 3 years ago, as I was discovering these things, I got in a relationship with a beautiful divine queen. It was one of the best experiences of my life. I learned so much. Yet I remember experiencing like getting too in my emotions, right? And where then she had to be in her masculine more often because I was in my emotions more and wanting to open up and share. But so I know that experience, and I think it's as long as you understand and you get into that balance of learning to use these things as like to just understand yourself deeper and not like swing to the one side a lot and like stay there, right? Which can happen, right? What got you into this stuff? Like how did you get into this work, right? It's not like if I talk to a doctor or surgeon, like, oh, what made you get into this space? Like, oh, I always loved doing surgeries, or like, growing up I loved watching Grey's Anatomy and that got me interested into nursing. Or so it's like, well, I love working and talking to coaches because their stories are always different, and it's personal in a way as well. It's what intrigued them to get into the space, right? So tell us a little about yourself and like how you got to where you are now and teaching the stuff that you're teaching.
Yeah. My journey into the personal development world really started from my own personal health challenges, emotional and physical health. So I was 25 years old and I had gone down kind of just following what I thought I should do, but unconsciously. So basically, I was 25. I was married. We had this kind of picture perfect marriage. I actually had started my own nutrition business, was in wanting to help people with their health and wellness, because that was something that I had to overcome. And during this time was when I was really struggling with depression and really not understanding, like, why am I so unhappy? Why do I have these chronic health issues? I had digestive issues. I was exhausted all the time. And I couldn't really figure out, like, why was I so unhappy in a relationship where, quote unquote, there was nothing wrong, where like on paper, everything seemed okay. There was no fighting, anything like that. And I was just really in this space of self-inquiry of like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I just be happy? And through that work, I really, really learned and just sitting with myself and doing the self-discovery work, I got to that place where I recognized that I had been living a life based off of what other people had wanted for me. And I had been kind of performing unknowingly to gain the approval and acceptance of others. And it was during this time when I also started to realize that in my nutrition business with my clients, that like, even though they had all the tools, even though they had all the information, that there was still this underlying block for them. They weren't actually creating changes that changed their happiness, that made them feel better about themselves. And so along this journey of both my own exploration and working with my clients, I really got to this place of realizing, there's something deeper here. There's something deeper that's missing. And that's really where I would say like spirituality and personal development work came into my life. I remember the moment where I had, really been in the contemplation of, am I going to leave my marriage? Can I really do this? Can I really listen? Can I trust myself? Can I listen to my intuition? Like, my intuition was screaming at me and trying to get my attention. And I kept kind of shoving it down and pushing it aside. And eventually I couldn't do that anymore because I was in so much physical pain and emotional pain that I realized that I had to do things differently. And it was around this time where I really started to discover more this concept of masculine and feminine energy. And I was really in my masculine. I was trying to control things all the time. And yeah, I got to the place where I just surrendered, where I was exhausted of trying to figure out the answers, of trying to figure out the solution of how I was going to fix all of this. And I really got to that place where I just turned to the universe, which I had never done before, and just said, like, I need help. Like, please show me the way. Please show me what to do. Like, I'm tired of trying to figure this out on my own. And from that time really felt guided to get into a consistent meditation practice and started to really sit with myself and the feminine of being with my emotions and really seeing what was there. And through that, discovered my own truth that, I was living out of alignment with who I really was, that there were certain parts of me that were being really suppressed in the relationship and the life that I was living, and really decided and got to that place where it was just like, I need to prioritize my own happiness. And the way that I'm going to do that is to listen to my soul and to follow where my soul is guiding me. And so that's really how it happened. And through that, my health improved, my relationships improved, my mental health improved, and I started to attract and manifest everything that I had desired before, that I had been sitting there being like, I wish I had close friends. I wish I had this freedom lifestyle. I wish that my business was more successful. All the things that I had desired started to come to me a lot more easily. And before, it was like this forcing and this pushing and this trying. And as soon as I shifted, it really started to be about attracting and receiving.
That's amazing. And did you end up getting out of that marriage that you were in, or did you stay?
Yeah. So it took me about 3 years from the time that I started questioning and like feeling unsure about the relationship to actually making the decision to leave. And it was by far the most gut-wrenching, painful decision that I had ever made, because not only did it affect my partner, but it affected our families. And it was one of those times where it was like, okay, either I'm going to try to keep pleasing everyone else, either I'm going to try and make everyone else happy at the expense of my own happiness, or I'm going to do something that feels true, that feels right. And yeah, it was a really, really big turning point in my life where I finally started to follow my own path, and I learned a lot in that process.
Yeah, no, I can imagine, right? Especially being married and actually going through this journey and actually taking action on it, right? Because a lot of people, even though their intuition is calling and screaming, they are seeing messages all over. They're not healthy, emotionally, physically. Yet most people will never. I feel like they will go to a doctor and get prescription before they actually do the self-discovery journey and follow their intuition, sit and meditate, and the questions that come up and the answers that come up, and then take action on those things, which is really like, we are all our best healers. No one else can really heal us if we can just truly, have the best transformations happen for ourselves if we just, direct our attention inward and pay attention to everything that comes up and go from there on, right? That's amazing. And then, something I actually have noticed, a lot of females are these days in their masculine, especially when they're in relationships. And what I've noticed also about men, or a lot of men are passive in the sense of like, they're letting the woman be in her masculine, and then this concept of happy wife, happy life, and they do things, and it's interesting. So that they're passive. And what I feel that these relationships require is that if the man stands up and embodies the king energy, embodies the masculine, positive masculine energy, the feminine naturally goes into her feminine energy and truly starts, because the only way of the feminine can come up and start to embody her feminine energy in a healthy manner is if she feels safe, right? If she feels like this man can hold space for me, this man has this container to protect me and navigate through my emotional waves that come up, right? And most men haven't done the work, and most men are not like for example, like as a girlfriend comes home and it's like, I had such a long day, and then the natural thing most men do, and I used to do this, is like, let's fix it. Like, let's fix this. Okay, what happened? It's like, no, like, you just gotta listen. You just gotta listen and hold space for her, hold her, and just say, like, and just really just listen of, okay, you had a bad day. What happened? You know, what was bothering you? Who bothered you? Or was it that crazy employee again? And like hold space for the emotional waves that she's going through, right? And what I have noticed because this happened to me as well years ago, and I seem to notice it a lot where most females are in their masculine because which is literally a very direct sign that they're obviously not like the man is obviously not, and this is for couples, right? Obviously the man is not holding that space, not in like making this woman feel safe for her to embody her feminine energy, right? Which is, it's very, like, I feel like it's very easy to read that for myself these days, right? Even when I see friends that are in marriages and couples and all this, and like, you know, happy, and the guy is like happy wife, happy, and then like it's like, no, that's not helping it. By you being passive, by you not, you know, being in protecting and providing mode, that's the solution. Like, you know, as like for me, like as I've discovered this about myself, I've realized like I love being a provider and a protector. Like it truly is the best feeling for me. Like it's like, and like my last relationship, same thing. Like it's like, you know, sometimes for when you're in, you know, a new relationship, for example, it's hard, you know, it's harder for both of you guys to kind of like figure something out in a sense of where like, am I asking for too much? Am I not asking for too much? And like one of the things that when I'm in my relationships is like, I love to protect and I love to provide. So it's like I try to make that environment, create that environment for the queen in my life to be able to ask me for anything. Like I take pleasures in providing and protecting. So it's like, and then she might be coming from, you know, which is very common from a space and a place and a family that, you know, we don't do that. I don't ask for things. Like I don't come off as needy. I don't want to, right? And there's, of course, there's healthy places to like where too needy and like, you know, in a space where you're asking from a genuine place. But anyways, my point is like, that's what I've been noticing in relationships. Like, it's like, I feel like most females are in their masculine because the man is playing passive and he's not taking that masculine role and embodying a king energy, what I like to call it, right? What do you think of that? Do you feel like that's kind of something that you're noticing, and share also some other things that you're noticing by when you're working with women and just, yeah, like the experiences, the challenges that you're seeing most women have?
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say that we want to blame it all on the men. I think that this is a larger conversation culturally. We've kind of gotten really confused with gender roles and energies within the context of dating and romantic relationships. So if we go back to, let's just say like the hunter-gatherer days, you know, we had clear roles for men. Men were providers and they went out and hunted, and women took care of children and they cooked and they took care of the home. Same thing, even, you know, in the 50s, we've got the housewife and then we've got the man who goes to his job, and the industrial, you know, they go to work.
Yeah.
Now we have a world after, you know, the feminist movement and just the way that things are today is that a lot of women do want to work. They don't just want to be at home. And there are some men who want to be at home and be nurturing and caretakers, and they don't want to be the only provider. Or a lot of family structures or relational structures are like both people are working. So I think that because of where we're at in the landscape of relating, and even just the cultural shifts that we've been seeing, it does get confusing. You know, who's supposed to be in their masculine, who's supposed to be in their feminine. And I don't know that it's kind of the chicken or the egg situation. Is it because the woman is, you know, in her masculine all the time, which emasculates the men and doesn't give them space to lead? Or is it that the men are too soft and being pushovers, and then that causes women to be more in their masculine? There's not a clear answer for every relationship. I would say is probably different. But what I would say is the key is for both people to be aware of what their energetic balance is. And I like to do this work first individually, because it can be easy to point at your partner and be like, he's not in his masculine, so I have to be in my masculine. It's like, wait, what about taking ownership for your own energy?
Mm,
Are you always in your masculine? Because if you are, then your partner can't be in their masculine. Or if both people are in their masculine, your heads are going to butt and it's not going to work. So I think it's really about exploring these two energies within yourself through your day to day. Do you notice, okay, when I'm in my work, when at work, as a woman, if I'm in my masculine, like that could work for you in your work life, but is that working for you in your relationship to be
mm,
in that energy all the time? And so I think it really, it isn't like one side to blame or one person's responsibility. I think if each of us becomes more integrated in understanding how to flow between these two energies, being aware of the dynamics.
mm,
And, as a woman, if I notice that, like, a man's not pursuing me, or in a relationship they're not taking charge, I can take a look at, oh, have I been in my masculine too much? Let me see what happens if I drop into my feminine a little bit. Let me see what
mm,
happens if I relax and I stop trying to control things and I give him space to lean in,
mm,
right? It's not about being passive and not asking for what your needs are, or communicating what you need. It's not about playing games in any way, but it's really about recognizing, like, oh, I wonder if I was a little bit more playful and soft, like, would
mm,
that give my partner more permission to be in his masculine energy,
mm,
and vice versa. So hopefully that answers. I definitely see this dynamic playing out a lot, and the fastest way to know if your polarity is off in a relationship is the sexual chemistry.
mm,
Because if the passion, which over time can happen, but really taking a look at, if the passion is not there,
mm,
it's likely because both of you are in your masculine energy,
mm,
or your man's too much in his feminine energy and you're too much in your masculine energy. Like, you're not in your core energetics within the relationship. So
mm,
that's one way that we can tell when intimacy, I wouldn't just say physical intimacy, but when there's an emotional intimacy is not flowing,
mm.
those are the signs to say, oh, maybe there's something going on here with our energy and with our polarity that we need to pay attention to.
No, I love, first of all, the way you explained it, that is just look at yourself and really pretty much what's the thought that I had here when I was listening to you was, so me, it seems like when I come off sometimes is that I feel like I'm blaming the man. And really, I know where that comes from, is that like I like to take full radical responsibility. So in a sense, so I'm always looking at like but I obviously have boundaries in place, in a sense of like I will understand, let's say if I'm with someone and like they're in their traumas and they're not like coming from a healthier place. So obviously I understand that. But let's say if I ask someone that's amazing, that's great, they are just a beautiful companion, I'm very, like I said, I take full responsibility in the sense of like, how can I help my queen embody, be more in her feminine? How can I create the situations where she can thrive in her feminine, assuming that her core energy and what she loves the most is her feminine energy, right? So of course, understanding obviously what it is like, and for me, from my experience, I'm very attracted to feminine women, like women that their core energy is being in their feminine energy, right? Just being in the sense of intuition and in their feelings. But at the same time, I've noticed that there's still attraction for females that like to make decisions and all those things. I think what I have learned is that my core energy is masculine. I'm attracted to a female with her core energy is feminine. But for small things, like I still don't mind when a woman takes like makes the decisions, like, what are we going to eat tonight? Baby, you already know what I like, just make something. But those literally small things, like I don't mind, my female being in a masculine, in the sense of making decisions and like, booking a restaurant for us to go on date nights and stuff like that, right? But in the bigger things that, we live in an economic world, like money like affects things, like a lot of these things. So like for me, I'm very I've always been committed to being financially well off and working, making sure I have money and I have a life and I have investments and all this type of thing. So it's like not only for myself, like I've noticed, like the more financially free I am and stable I am, the more my own feminine is having more fun. I take more baths. I spoil myself. I buy myself things that I want, everything, right? And then the second thing actually I wanted to share about what you mentioned. So you're so right. First of all, I love how self-aware you are. Like when I do these interviews, I love talking to women. And when I see whether it's a male or a female coach, like how are they communicating and how are they sharing and what are they saying, and by listening to you in this first half hour, 45 minutes here, I can tell and I can see a woman that has done the work, and just through your own self-awareness, right? And one of the things that you mentioned was the intimacy. You're so right. Like that is such a good thing to look at when you're in a relationship. Like, how is our sex life right now? And I talk a lot about sexual energy, and I have one of the things that I do is I help men get over watching porn, right? So one of my main programs is that. And so sexual energy and all these things that I talk a lot about it, right? And how you can use your sexual energy for productive things, creative things, all that stuff. But what you mentioned about, like, one of the first places to look at if the relationship is off, if the polarity is off, is to just look at your sex life. Like, are you guys having intimate, amazing sex, and also emotional intimacy? Are you guys having deep talks and deep conversations, and you are, exciting and getting yourself curious through these awesome conversations? And if you're not, it's a great way to be like, okay, well, let me just dive deeper here. How has things been lately? Have I been in my core energy as hours in all these things? It kind of can give you like an indication where if things are off or not, right? What do you actually, I'm curious to hear. So like, how did you discover that? Like, how did you realize that when the intimacy is off in a relationship, that's a great place to kind of start looking, be like, okay, I think the polarity is off right now. Like we're not in our core energies. How did you like come to that realization?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was because there was very little intimacy in my marriage, and I started to recognize there were several things that were out of balance. But one of the when doing some deeper discovery, I recognized, like, wow, I've been in my masculine a lot in this relationship, and my partner's core energetic, while he could access his masculine energy, it wasn't turned on most of the time. And so it created this lack of attraction, for lack of better words. Like I wasn't as attracted to my partner, and we weren't having the deep intimacy that I had had and knew was possible with other partners. So, for me, recognizing, okay, what role do I play in that? And what role does my partner play in that? And when the polarity is on with a partner, and when I allow myself to be more in my feminine, which I really want to emphasize this too, because there was something that you shared about, like, you're attracted to, like, when a woman is feminine.
Yeah.
And I want to really emphasize that a woman can still be feminine, and she can still be powerful. She can still be confident, yet still be soft and vulnerable. And that just because a woman is in her feminine doesn't mean that she doesn't have that, like, powerful nature, or she doesn't have boundaries. And that's really what this, like, what I like to call is like an empowered feminine woman who can access both her masculine and feminine energies. That just because she likes to be sensual and playful and fun doesn't mean that she can't also, like, be powerful and confident. So within the feminine, there's so many different aspects. And I think that's kind of a misconception that people think of. They think, okay, well, if I'm going to be in my feminine as a woman, I need to always be light, and I always need to be, playful and all of this. And really, the feminine has so many different expressions. She has her rage, she has her deep emotions, she has her power, she has her play, and that's really what I love playing with these different archetypes and embodiments of the feminine, is that, like, the feminine doesn't just look one way, is what I'd love to share in that. Yeah.
No, I love that you shared that as well. And it's so true. There's a quote that I read a while ago. The original warriors were goddess worshippers. And why I'm sharing that is that, yeah, like it's very common to make this assumption that like, you know, a woman that's in her feminine energy and playful and sensual and surrounding to the masculine, right? That one could assume that like they're weaker and like they're not as powerful. But no, I agree with everything you just mentioned. Like a woman being in her core energy and that core energy being in feminine energy is a powerful place to be. And a woman that embodies that feminine energy and she fully knows how she fully is fully liberated and happy, and she has got herself to that space where she embodies the feminine energy and she's totally okay with it, and she knows how powerful it really is. So yeah, no, for sure, like a woman that is in her feminine energy, as there's nothing we could say soft and everything, but that does not mean exactly like that she's not powerful. I believe actually anyone that is in their core energies and they're embodying that energy are powerful beings, because it's taking some kind of work to get there, right? And especially in this patriarchal masculine world, for a feminine to embody her feminine energy, I think that's the most powerful thing ever. And that actually shows power, shows sovereignty, right? So yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And you're also right, like that assumption could happen, right? Because most people that haven't done the work are not aware of the energies, in a way could assume like, oh, a feminine woman is one that kind of like just does whatever you tell her to do and all those things. No, actually, a feminine energy, there, like you were saying, there's so many different energies, right? There, the power and this, I like to call it the emotional waves of a queen. And there's a lot of emotional waves, right? And for me, and this is why I believe that most men should tap into their feminine energy, because the goddess that I'm manifesting in my life, let's say, right? You know, the queen that I want in my life, what's the best way to get ready for her is to start embodying my own feminine energy, right? So I was actually, a couple of weeks ago, I had a priestess, me and her are great friends, and after we had like, we will jump on FaceTimes and we talk a lot, and she was like, you're manifesting your queen and you might have already manifested her. Because why? Because she said, you're already embodying that feminine energy. You are like, I take baths and I have like rose water, like I spray it and just to like get those feminine senses going within myself, right? And so now, why am I so sure that, let's say, like my next relationship would be amazing, is because I just have done this work of understanding the feminine within myself, which is no different than when I, you know, witnessed the feminine within someone else, right? I see my own feminine energy. It's emotional, like, you know, sad one day, happy one day, goal-oriented one day. And in one day I'm like just sitting in. So I've done all this work within myself. You know, I've done, you know, I grew up in a very dysfunctional family in a sense, and war and all this. So like I have that days where I just fully was in my feminine and crying and crying and crying, right? Expressing those emotions, holding space, obviously, through my masculine for those parts of myself, right? So I have this full understanding that like what I'm attracted to in a female is that there's all these emotional waves, right? I want to be able to create and have this container where she can be all parts of herself and still feel fully safe to be like, to look at me and be like, damn, like you're a good man. Like you are able to hold space for all these emotional things that happens within me and still love me for all of it, right? And how did I get there is because I have learned to love myself for all those parts of me, right?
Mm.
A question I want to ask is like, do you work with men, or is it most of your clients are women?
I primarily work with women. Yeah.
Okay, okay. And so, yeah, like, so I'm just curious, like, what would you say to the men that, or let's say not tapped into their feminine energy? As a woman, let's say that is obviously working with women as well. So you're hearing a lot of stories about, you know, what I wish my desired man did, or what I wish he looked like, or in a sense, stuff like that, right? How important would you say it is for men to tap into their feminine energies? And I feel like I asked this question earlier, but I want almost for you to give us like practical steps, you know, like do this or journal this, or, you know, stuff like that.
Hmm. Yeah, I think a really powerful place to start for men is actually joining a men's group.
Mm,
because part of what that does is it opens space to see other men who are still very much masculine, still solid in their masculine energy, but that they're in a space where they're open to sharing their feelings and
mm,
what's coming up for them in their life.
yeah.
So, you can do the work on your own, and I think for men being part of a community or a group where they are being held accountable
Mm,
to doing their own work, being held to integrity to doing their work, and sometimes in that group setting it can feel more approachable.
yeah.
So that's one thing. There's some amazing men's coaches that host men's groups, and I think that's a really great place to start, specifically because I don't work with men. I do women's groups and everything, so I don't have a step by step. But what a lot of women say is they want their man to be present.
Mm,
They want their man to be able to, like you've been talking a lot about, to be able to not try and fix things or not try to make it all better if they're having emotions that are coming up.
mm,
So a lot of it is really about that presence. And I think what a lot of women want is for men to be doing their own work. It's not specifically that they want their men to be more connected to their feminine energy, but they want men to be doing the inner work to become the best versions of themselves. And I think some women actually want men to be more grounded in their masculine, in forward direction, being goal oriented, being motivated, moving forward in their life.
mm,
And that creates a much stronger polarity. So I think though that's where I would start, is really knowing that through doing, whether it's men's work or your own personal development work, like, women don't want men to be more in their feminine. They want them to be more integrated. They want them to be more conscious and present. I think that's really what they're looking for.
no, that's good. I love that. And it's interesting actually you mentioned the men's circle. I host the men's circle every Tuesday here in town.
Mm-hmm.
It's not for like I'll say like financial gains or financial purposes. It's literally like when I came here, like I just felt called to. I'm very heart oriented. Even though I am still a logical person, but like I'm very heart oriented in this stage of my life where I just follow my heart doing the things that I do. And so when I came actually here, I decided to start a men's circle at this community. And it's amazing actually what can happen when men get together, right? And if you're able to hold space for your brothers and like the emotional things that can come up, and like it's just helpful. So I love that you share that. And then the second thing about being present, I think that's so key. That's something I'm working on myself daily, to just be more present really in this life, because time is really flown by so fast. It's like, so just be present and enjoy life. And especially if you are with a divine woman in your life, be more present with her, like enjoy those moments and make memories and have experiences, right? Yeah, I love this session here with us. Like, I feel like you are somebody that whoever that's learning from you, they're definitely learning the right stuff and the right information. So that's amazing. And so tell us a little about your program in a sense of like, so what does that look like? So you do coaching with women. Is it like a retreat, or do they like buy a course from you? Just because like 40% of the listeners, actually, I think 60% of the listeners right now on my podcast are actually female,
Mhm.
and 40% are male. So yeah, just kind of give us information on the sense of like what it looks like to work with Amy, in case if any of the women are curious and obviously want to reach out to you.
Mhm. Yeah. So the best place to start is by listening to my podcast, which is
Okay.
the Feminine Frequency Podcast. There's a lot of information, both with guests and also some solo episodes of how you can start to tap more into your feminine energy. I
Mm,
also have an online course, which is a 6-week course called the Feminine Frequency Journey.
mm,
And it really walks you through these 6 different principles of the feminine to help you to get back into soul alignment, to listen to your intuition, to connect more with your pleasure,
mm,
to navigate your emotions when they come up, to
mm.
attract more abundance. So that course is accessible on my website. You can find it at amynatalieco.com. And
Okay.
then I also do one-on-one coaching. So I do a 4-month one-on-one intimate setting where we really do a lot of the deeper emotional healing and coming back into balance with your feminine energy, inviting more of that divine feminine energy into your life.
Mm.
And those are the different ways that I'm currently working with women.
No, that's amazing. So you said you have a podcast as well?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's
Yes.
amazing. I didn't even like I usually just like I just went on your page and just looked at a bunch of your posts just to kind of get an idea. But that's awesome that you have a podcast as well. Oh, who knows? I might potentially be a guest on there.
Yeah, we have over 200 episodes, so there's lots to choose from, and we have an amazing podcast community over there.
No, that's amazing. And what is it called?
The Feminine Frequency Podcast.
Feminine Frequency Podcast. Oh, that's amazing.
Mhm.
A question that comes to my mind is that, so when it comes to like having sex and sexual experiences within a relationship, right? And let's say that somebody is in that stage, a man or a woman listening to this right now, and they're like, wow, damn, like I wasn't really aware of this polarity stuff, but like me and my woman or me and my man, I haven't been that intimate recently. And everything that you guys like we just shared kind of hit home for them, right? So how would you what would you suggest for those two individuals to get that spark back in their life? Like what to do
Mhm.
if they're literally listening to the podcast and they're like there right now and they're like, holy crap, like I guess like I gotta look into this stuff. What would you suggest for them to do?
Mhm. Yeah, I think part of it is having the awareness and bringing some communication into the relationship, where just
Mm,
acknowledging and being honest about what you would like your sex life to look like, where it's at right now, what's working for you, what's not working for you, what are your desires. And
mm,
I think that it really starts with communication first in that specific couple, and not from a place of blaming the other person, but really just being acknowledging that, there's a certain part of your life, this part of your sex life that doesn't feel fulfilling or that you would like more of, and starting to have the conversation from there. And that's really where I would start, is with communication. And then for women, what I really support them with is really around the feminine embodiment, which is getting more connected to your body,
mm,
feeling the sensations in your body,
mm,
which happens through the way that I teach this is through a movement and music journey. It's a somatic healing journey where we
mm,
really embrace your sensuality, we embrace your power, we embrace your inner child, and really through this practice, getting more connected with your body. When a woman is more connected with her body, she's able to experience more pleasure. She's
mm,
able to communicate with her partner what feels good, what doesn't feel good, what she needs, what she desires. And when a woman is more just turned on to life in general because she is connected to her feminine energy,
mm,
that brings all of that aliveness into the relationship, into their sex life. So
mm,
I again can't specifically speak to the process for men, but
mm,
really getting into your bodies and being more connected with your sexual energy is, and seeing if there's any blocks there for you, I
mm.
think would be the next steps if you're wanting to improve your intimacy in your partnership.
No, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And one last question, actually. So, because you work with a lot of women, right? How often do you find that pornography is a problem in the relationships that they're in the sense of that they're not happy with their man watching porn? And this might be like almost two questions here. And how do most women feel? And in a way, because you work with women, you could almost speak in a general opinion on like what are you experiencing in a sense based on all the people that you work with, right? Like what are women's thoughts on their men watching pornography?
Yeah, to be honest, that's not really an area of my own expertise. I don't work specifically in the realm of sex and pleasure with women. I have some colleagues who are really, experts, and that's their area of focus. I really
Mhm.
work more on confidence, feminine embodiment. So it's not necessarily a conversation like this around specifically around sexual intimacy that I would say that I'm I'm an expert in, which is
Yeah.
also why that conversation probably doesn't come up so much in my work. It doesn't feel
Yeah.
like it's a main concern that women
Yeah.
come specifically to me for.
Okay.
So yeah, I think I can't specifically speak to that
Speak for
concern that women have.
speak on your own, like on your own personal opinion. Like, what are your thoughts yourself? And like, if you are dating somebody, you're seeing someone, and let's say they're watching pornography, and let's say they're watching it, twice a week at least. Like, how would you feel about that?
I think it really depends on if it's a healthy or unhealthy addiction, if it's affecting our sex life. I can't say like a blanket statement that I wouldn't want my partner to watch any porn. Like I don't have a strong aversion to that. And I think it really would depend on how is that affecting our partnership and our intimacy, and is it distracting from him being present? Like, I definitely have some things around, the ethics of porn and like the show business of porn. Like, it creates a lot of misconceptions of what sex and what intimacy, especially for women's pleasure, what's available. I'm reading a really great book right now, which is called Women's Anatomy of Arousal. And in porn, in porn, it's like this idea that you just have, penetration, you just go straight in for penetration and the woman loves it and she has an orgasm and it's great. But when you really understand a woman's body, like it takes time for her to get turned on and to be ready for penetration and to actually have, great orgasms. And so I think porn can be harmful to how men relate to women, because it creates this misconception of how women actually receive pleasure. So that's a larger conversation of my perspective on it. But yeah, I think it ultimately comes down to how is their relationship to porn or their relationship to their own sexuality impacting our connection.
Oh yeah, no, and great answer for sure. And I think it's there's like so many more studies that's happening. This is kind of like where my expertise in a way. But yeah, no, there's so many studies happening in the sense of like long-term consistent watching porn. It leads to objectifying women. It leads to giving you the misconceptions that like most men that just assume like, oh, this is how a woman wants it. And then when you really truly understand sexual energy and tantra and understanding a woman, it's like, it's like what's the good thing? Like a woman, it's not just, between her legs. That's like the sex starts way before the bedroom. The dance of it starts way before the bedroom. How are you complimenting her? How are you talking to her? How are you touching her? And not in all parts of her body are sensitive spaces and places that can lead to pleasure, right? So, and also my last thought was that this is just from my experience and talking to many men, like if a man is in a relationship and he's watching porn 1 to 2, 3 times a week, there's definitely some kind of underlying problem. There's no way there isn't. And this is from talking to probably hundreds of men at this point. But then of course there's healthy porn. If that is happening once a week and you're watching with your partner to learn some stuff or get some ideas and stuff like that, that's a whole different story, right? And it's interesting because as I'm finishing the podcast, there was also I had questions about you inner child work. But I feel like we'll probably end up having another episode because you mentioned something about it. And I was like, I have a whole lot of questions about inner child work. That's something that, I have started to do. Probably it's been my second year. Doing inner child work has led to just beautiful things that have happened in my life. But yeah, I have lots of questions on that as well. So before we finish off the podcast here, Amy, please let everyone know, because I'm going to put this in the detail section of the podcast. Please let everyone know where they can find you.
Yeah. So once again, the Feminine Frequency Podcast, you can find that on any major podcast platform. Okay. And then you can also find me on Instagram. My handle is at Amy Natalie Co.
Awesome. Sounds good. So yeah, no, I'm definitely going to put that in. I just want to say thank you so much for your time, blessing us with your time. It was A pleasure for me. I've been told I'm an organic facilitator. So it's like, we never know what conversations that ends up on the podcast. But I feel like we really did have a great conversation, and I'm sure the listeners are going to get a lot of value from everything that we talked about. So lastly, I just want to say again, thank you so much for jumping on and giving us an hour of your time.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. And as I finish the podcast here, guys, I want to put and set some intentions out there. My intentions are truly for you guys to listen to the podcast and take small practical things and start to implement it in your daily life. My intentions are for you to realize the power of doing this inner work, self-discovery work. My intentions are for you to understand the power of gratitude, the power of meditation, the power and the magic that comes when you spend time with yourselves. And, my intentions are for you to understand and dig deeper to learn more about your own emotions. My intentions are for you to just realize that a lot of the answers that you're looking for outside are already actually within you. You just have to, give yourself that time. And with that being said, until next time, stay an aware alpha.